Are you a doctor who is moving into industry this year, or even setting up your business as a service provider independently to customers and clients this year? So if you are, definitely listen to this podcast, because I really want to highlight how amazing doctors like you can really, really struggle when it comes to selling themselves to get the opportunities they want. So if you really want to get ahead and not make mistakes like I did, then listen on. Hello, listeners. Today we are focusing on one of the most dirtiest words that has ever come to us doctors, is the word sell. And particularly when it comes to selling ourselves to get the industry opportunity that we want, either getting a job or selling our services to a potential client. And before I get into it, I got so excited about this topic that we are actually running a masterclass on it, because you really need to go in depth to really understand how best to sell yourself. So we're running one on the February the 15th. If you go to medicfootprints.org/how to sell, 2 being the number 2, then you can find out more. And I really hope that you can join me in that, especially if you want to get ahead of the increasing number of doctors who are moving into industry this year, as the competitive landscape for the best jobs with the best employers is definitely hotting up. So moving into what is selling, right? So I actually looked up the definition of selling, and selling, there's two main definitions. One is to give or hand over services or something in exchange for money. And the second is to persuade someone of the merits of something. So obviously with the first definition, money isn't necessarily in our vocabulary when it comes to what we're used to in the world of work as doctors. But persuading someone of the merits of something definitely is. So when we look at our consultations with patients, a lot of it is about understanding the challenges they're experiencing, understanding symptoms, and prescribing the best option for them. So the good news is, if you're someone that thinks that they're not great at selling, really there isn't that much work to do. We just need to basically really be conscious of the importance of selling when it comes to developing your career, but also do a little bit more work on honing on what are the most important factors we need to focus on. I was applying for multiple jobs without a single interview. So this registrar, I mean, as you know, with surgeons, they have to be highly academic, so had a lot of publications, had a master's in surgical science, just an all-round amazing looking CV. But that's an amazing CV if you are a surgeon, right? And so this registrar, they were looking to get out of medicine in general and had been applying several jobs in the digital health sphere. And the types of jobs they were applying for were really, really broad. Anything from content producer to clinical lead to business development. All kind of relevant to being a doctor, but, you know, in different subsectors, so to speak, within health tech. And not to say there wasn't any interest whatsoever, but it was just clear there wasn't much progression in the way of actually getting the foot in the door. And because this had gone on for so long and the surgical reg was actually quite desperate to leave their clinical role, someone suggested to them that they should try shadowing or interning or volunteering at a health tech startup for free, because essentially that seemed to be the only way to get into a job. And then once they're in, it would be easier to get a role. So let me tell you, I mean, this example of the surgical reg, from the start and just from hearing that story, I could recognise that it wasn't the registrar as a product that was the problem. It was essentially there were lots of challenges this registrar was experiencing with regards to actually articulating how amazing they are and relevant they were for this job. So, and this really illustrates some of the common things that we do see amongst doctors who are going for industry roles. So just pointing out a few things that stood out. Number one, this doctor was essentially spraying and praying in their approach when it came to job applications. So it wasn't really being very focused on what to apply for. So going for quantity out of quality. The next thing that stood out was that the doctor was really kind of relying on what was online to apply for jobs, which again isn't a bad thing. But as you know, if you've heard some of my previous podcasts or me speak in general, I always recommend really rely on investing in your network to find the right opportunity rather than relying on advertised opportunities, simply because advertised opportunities represent a very, very small proportion of the breadth of opportunities available. And it's more likely you'll get a job successfully when you use your own network to uncover something that would work more for you than for everybody, right? Because a lot of jobs actually just get created for the right people. The other point I didn't mention was that this particular doctor, I told you they'd done a master's. They were also looking to do a digital health master's on top of it because they thought that was the thing that wasn't getting them through the door. And not to say digital health masters would not help. I think one of the benefits of doing a master's is an opportunity to network with people within digital health. But by no means it was not something that person had to mandatorily do in order to get the job. It's just one thing. And it's very, very common for doctors to think, I'll just do this other tick box exercise qualification and that's going to be the answer to all my prayers. No, that clearly was not going to be the case. And finally, I really, really dislike it when I hear doctors are encouraged to go for a pay cut, a significant pay cut, when they go into industry, because that also does not have to be the case. I know for some roles, they have very standardized salaries, like you might see that in consulting, for example. And in many cases, you would have to weigh out the risks and benefits of taking a pay cut. But in many, many cases, you will see that the actual salary progression can be very quick and substantial. But generally speaking, being told that you have to work for free or take a substantial pay cut at the start isn't always necessary. So this leads me on to 3 reasons why doctors fail to sell themselves despite being great doctors, right? And let me tell you, there are lots of other reasons, but these are 3 key ones that I've picked out. So I'd say the first key reason is not knowing yourself and your true value. So many of us, we've trained forever in medicine and actually not really taken much time to know ourselves and know about ourselves and learn about ourselves beneath the surface, beneath the I'm a doctor. Like, how many of you can truly hold your hands up and say, I know myself? And I can tell you, I absolutely did not completely know myself. And I still am getting to really reconnect with myself again because I spend most of my time training and working as a doctor. And on the side of that, really understanding what is my true value to myself, let alone to other people, which is beyond essentially being a doctor. So what I'm getting at here is really understanding your values, because once you're really clear on your values, and that's who you are and who you're for, this will help you narrow your focus on who you want to work for and establish some really important boundaries on what you are willing to do, what kind of work you're wanting to do, and who you're willing to engage with from a kind of work perspective. And being confident that you are not for everyone. The reality is not everyone is for everyone. And that's great. That's absolutely great. And I've already mentioned it, but the second point here on why great doctors fail to sell themselves is they tend to have a lack of clarity and focus. So I mentioned to you that the registrar, the surgical reg, was applying for multiple jobs within digital health. So I see digital health or health tech as healthcare in general. I mean, just tech-enabled healthcare, but that's going to be healthcare in the future, right? And so with this massive umbrella, this person wasn't able to really stand out in any particular niche, even though they probably had a niche that they could really focus on, even within surgery and health tech. So the important point to mention here is that in order to stand out, they need to be very clear on what they are amazing at and what internal and inherent skills they have that they can say, hey, I am a surgical registrar. I've got experience in, or I should say passionate about, anorectal cancers. And therefore, I'm only focusing on working with health tech companies who are working on med tech products in that area. So you can imagine how that person's life will change when it comes to applying for jobs, as in they will only be applying or looking for opportunities that fits into that category, which saves them a lot of time, a lot of effort. It enables them to really focus on what would work for them and help them to really curate a full-purpose CV, LinkedIn, and conversation, especially when you're talking about networking, with anyone in that domain or with anyone who may know someone in that domain. Their word-of-mouth ability, so I define that as the chances of them being referred to someone else or being remembered goes way sky high, right? And the chances of them getting a job in the right area will also go up. And finally, my last point on, reasons why great doctors fail to sell themselves is because they're not selling themselves to the right employers. So, the first 2 points I've already highlighted will point towards this. If you're applying for a opportunity, I know particularly in the UK, we're used to kind of applying blindly for the specialty, but not necessarily a particular hospital, because that's just how things rock up, unless you're a consultant. Basically, if you don't take the time to really know the employer beyond the job description, you will probably have a very difficult time getting ahead. Why? Because job descriptions generally are written quite poorly and are not representative of what the company actually needs. They have what they want, but not necessarily what they need. And you have to remember, you are selling yourself as a product. You are selling yourself as a service. And part of that means that you also need to be discerning on the other side. This is not just transactional like everyone else, like that's the approach that most people take. It has to be transformational. It has to be relational. So, the mindset you need to go in with whenever you are looking at working with a company or providing a service for a company is like, you've got to assess what are the main needs here and where can you significantly add value. If you do not feel like you could significantly add value, then this role is not for you. So, the whole point of this is actually just doing some homework in the back end. So beyond the job description, send an email, try and get on the phone, try and network with whoever's working there to really find out what is it like working at this company. So when you do apply, or if you do decide to apply because the fit is there, you can tailor your narrative to fit the role and the needs of that employer. And that will help you stand out. So just to recap, the 3 main reasons why great doctors fail to sell themselves is they don't know themselves and their true value. They have a lack of clarity and focus, and they do not take the time to really know the employer. So, many episodes, I've only scratched the surface of this issue. And if you are a doctor who is looking to move into industry, whether you are looking for a job or you are looking to set yourself up as a self-employed service provision or provider, then we are going into more detail on how best to sell yourself if you are going for a opportunity in industry at our masterclass, which will be taking place on the 15th of February. So if you're interested in finding out more, and most importantly, getting ahead of the competition. So as we speak, there are more and more doctors looking to leave their roles and moving into industry. So this is a great time for you to invest in yourself and get ahead of the game and get ahead of them. And most importantly, don't make the same mistakes I did and hundreds and thousands of other doctors have done, right? Learn from our mistakes and get things right the first time. Go to medicfootprints.org/how to sell, and 2 is a number 2, right? And that will take you to our masterclass page for you to sign up. And if you're listening to this and it's past February the 15th, 2023, there will likely be a recording available. So please email us at team@medicfootprints.org. If you are joining us, I cannot wait to support you in your growth as a doctor in industry, especially if you're looking to make a substantial impact in the world. I'll see you then.